Hello everyone, welcome to Pediatrics by Dr. Mayank. Today, topic of discussion is iron deficiency anemia. I guess it is the most common disease, most common thing which we are getting in our OPD practice as well as in our wards IPD, and this is the most common case, most easiest, and we can say it is the most difficult case which undergraduate gets in the final year examination of pediatrics. So this topic comes in medicine as well as in pediatrics and remains the same. So I'll be discussing this topic in following headings: introduction, then we'll be talking about iron, its metabolism, causes of iron deficiency anemia, clinical features, investigations and treatment. So let's start with introduction. Basically, iron deficiency anemia is topic I don't think which needs any introduction. It is so common in India as well as around the world. So iron deficiency anemia is the most common type of anemia which is present worldwide. So let's talk something about iron. Basically, iron has a wide role in almost all the parts of our body. It helps in vital functions, maintaining the vital functions of the body. It has many other functions. It helps the transport oxygen around the body. Basically, it helps in the formation of hemoglobin, which is the major oxygen carrier in our body. Hemoglobin, which is composed of heme and globin. That heme is basically iron, and that is why it plays role in transportation of the oxygen indirectly. Next, it is very important for healthy central nervous system and it plays role in energy metabolism. So iron deficiency anemia not merely leads to anemia, but it has many other roles than the formation of hemoglobin. But we only in layman, in when we talk normally, we only know that it helps in the formation of hemoglobin, which is very wrong. It helps in formation and synthesis of DNA. It helps in the synthesis of many enzymes which are required in the metabolism, and it helps in the synthesis of myoglobin, which is found in muscle and which is responsible for endurance and physical fitness of our body. It is very important for a healthy pregnancy. A healthy mother will lead to a healthy newborn, and a mother who has a normal amount of hemoglobin will lead to a delivery of a baby who has a normal hemoglobin. Going on to next is coming on to the sources of iron. Basically, sources of iron, there are of two types: heme iron and non-heme iron. By heme iron, we want to say that it is basically non-veg source of iron, and non-heme iron is vegetable source of iron, vegan iron. Okay, so heme iron, basically important sources are non-vegetarians, just I told, liver, meat, poultry and fish. Non-heme iron, it is legumes, beans, cereals, green leafy vegetables, jaggery, and I've added a photo here which shows mainly rich sources of iron like broccoli, jaggery. Jaggery is most common and most cheapest source of iron available in India. One thing important here before moving on to the further slide is that heme iron, it doesn't have any role or any factor in the gut. It doesn't affect the absorption of the heme iron. And but on the other side, non-heme iron gets affected by many substances in the non-heme in the absorption of iron, which we'll be discussing in the further slides. Next, coming on to the iron metabolism. See, studying iron metabolism is the most important to understand iron deficiency anemia. Why? Because if we'll understand the absorption of iron, its bioavailability, factors affecting its absorption, the clinical features, the pathogenesis and the treatment, everything gets crystal clear and it becomes more and more easy to understand. So, understanding the absorption of iron is very important. In this slide, we can see that there are factors which affect absorption of the iron. In bracket I have mentioned non-heme iron only, because I told heme iron is not affected by any condition in the gut. Only non-heme iron sources are only affected. So what are the factors which increases the absorption of iron? First we will discuss that. It is the pH of gut, the acidic pH. Mind it, the acidic pH increases the absorption of iron, whereas the alkaline pH, it decreases the absorption of iron. And where does absorption takes place? It takes place in duodenum, which we will be discussing in detail in the further slides. The ascorbates, the ascorbic acid, the vitamin C, all the citrus fruits like lemon, oranges, all this increase the absorption of iron. Amino acids, presence of sugars, EDTA, all these substances help in increased absorption of iron. Coming on to the, not only we should know these substances which increase, or the things which increase the absorption iron, we should know about the things which decreases the absorption, because to study anemia and to treat anemia it is equally important. The phytates, okay, this phytates thing is present in all cereals. Okay, so this presence of phytates in all cereals leads to the poor bioavailability of the iron, which decreases the absorption of iron in the cereal diet. Okay, presence of this phytates leads to the poor bioavailability of iron in the cereal food. That is why in North India, where the staple diet is basically cereals, that is one of the reason that there is iron deficiency anemia more. Coming on to the bovine milk, yeah, bovine milk or the animal milk has also, presence of bovine or animal milk also decreases the absorption of iron. Presence of tannins like tea, coffee and wine, all these things decreases the absorption of iron. Next, coming on to the phosphate, calcium and zinc. We should know this because all these substances decrease the absorption of iron. Calcium present in zinc. So if we are prescribing iron to any child, any patient of any age group, if we are prescribing calcium along with it, it should not be taken, the iron should not be taken up along with zinc or calcium. It should be taken separately. Like we are giving calcium in morning, it should be taken, the iron should be taken in evening, and it should not be taken along with milk because it decreases the absorption. Same goes with the zinc. Suppose we have a patient of diarrhea, we are giving zinc, let the diarrhea go subsides and zinc is continued for 14 days, but that's why we have to tell the patient that iron should not be taken along with zinc. Next, coming on to the bioavailability, this ferrous iron is more absorbed than the ferric iron. Okay, ferric iron is Fe3 plus and ferrous iron is Fe2 plus. This Fe2 plus is absorbed better than Fe3 plus. The importance lies in the absorption, and we'll be discussing. Wheat based diet has bioavailability of 2%. I already told because of the presence of phytates. Rice based diet on the other hand has bioavailability of 5 to 13%, which is much more than the wheat based diet. Next, heme iron. As I told you that nothing in the presence, nothing in the gut affects the absorption of heme iron, that is the non-veg sources of iron, and it has a bioavailability of 20 to 30%. Now coming on to the breast milk, it has bioavailability of 50 to 70%. So by discussing this thing, I want to tell that breast milk has very little amount of iron, but out of that little amount of iron, 50 to 70% of iron is bioavailable for getting absorbed. It is only because of the presence of protein known as lactoferrin. So because of presence of lactoferrin, the bioavailability of iron present in breast milk is 50 to 70%. The actual amount of iron is very small, but out of that small iron, 50 to 70% is available for absorption. Now coming on to the absorption, we have a mucosal cell theory. This is very important. the most important thing and most important slide of the whole presentation, and it should be in our tips. Should have a pictorial representation in our brain so that we can understand, and if we understand this slide, we can be able to understand the causes of iron deficiency and what to do for treatment. So let's study mucosal cell theory, which is theory for absorption of iron. As I told, we ingest iron. Okay, when we ingest iron, I just told that Fe2 plus, this is Fe2 plus, which is readily, more frequently, more easily absorbed by the mucosal cell, that is the duodenum of duodenum. Heme iron, on the other hand, as I told, is not affected by any substances, right? So we have a food, iron we ingest got ingested in the iron rich food. This iron present in food, if it is heme iron, that is, if it has a non-veg source of iron, it gets inside from this mucosal cell from a transporter known as heme transporter, and there is no problem, absolutely no problem. We can see it by a straight arrow going inside. So heme, there is no problem in this. Okay, so heme iron gets easily inside the mucosal cell, gets easily absorbed by heme transporter. Now whole thing is about the non-heme iron, the vegetable sources of iron. So the iron which it has is Fe3 plus. I already told, all the food which we eat mainly has Fe3 plus as the iron inside, and the non-heme iron. Now we have an enzyme that is known as duodenal cytochrome B. Okay, that is reductase enzyme, duodenal cytochrome B reductase enzyme, which reduces Fe3 plus to Fe2 plus, which is the most easy form of iron to get transported inside this duodenal mucosal cell. So again I'll tell, the enzyme is duodenal cytochrome B reductase. Okay, this reduces this Fe3 plus, which was found in our food as non-heme iron, is reduced to Fe2 plus, more easy form of getting absorbed. Now when this duodenal cytochrome B reductase has reduced this Fe3 plus to Fe2 plus, now we have Fe2 plus here. It has to go inside this mucosal cell. This is a mucosal cell. Okay, and this is the port, that is the transporter. This is DMT1. DMT1 stands for divalent metal transporter 1. To remember, we can see it is Fe2 plus, so it is a divalent ion cation, so it is divalent. Iron is a metal, divalent metal transporter 1. So we have DMT1 for movement of Fe2 plus inside this mucosal cell. So now both heme iron as well as the non-heme iron turned into Fe2, converted into Fe2 plus, is inside our mucosal cell. This was the brush border cells of the brush border layer. Okay, we can see the villi projections. This is the brush border layer of the mucosal cell. Now iron is already inside this mucosal cell. Now what is next? If our body, there is deficiency of iron, or our body requires iron at that time. Okay, there are two conditions: if the body there is deficiency, or if the body requires iron at that time, or the other condition is there is sufficient iron in the body, body doesn't require iron at that particular time. So in that particular of time, this iron which is inserted inside this mucosal cell, get attached to a molecule known as apoferritin, apoferritin molecule. Iron gets bind to it and gets converted into ferritin, which is the storage form of iron, that is known as mucosal ferritin. Okay, now this is the storage form. If body this is the scenario if body is having sufficient stores of iron and doesn't needs more iron inside the blood, or the tissues doesn't require the more, it gets stores inside the mucosal cell as mucosal ferritin. Coming on to the next, if requires body has a demand for iron, what happens next? There is another port which is known as ferroportin. Okay, this is ferroportin. So this is the basolateral membrane of the mucosal cell. Here is the blood. So this is the ferroportin. Now this this iron, okay, this converted iron, whether it is heme or whether it is non-heme iron, this iron gets bind to another molecule which is known as transferrin. Okay, it is transferrin. It binds, this iron binds to transferrin, and in this bounded form to transferrin protein, the iron moves out of the mucosal cell via this ferroportin 1. I'll repeat, if the iron has a demand, body has a demand of iron, this iron gets bound to a molecule known as transferrin, which helps in transfers. We can remember by transferrin helps in transfers. Okay, so this iron gets bound to transferrin, and after binding to transferrin, this iron gets outside the mucosal cell from the basolateral membrane by a gate known as ferroportin 1. Okay, now this Fe2 plus iron has come out of the mucosal cell. Very important. Now what happens? This Fe2 plus, okay, this Fe2 plus is now available for in the blood, and blood has to take it to the all the tissues. But again, blood can take it in the form of Fe3 plus iron. Again, initially we took it from food as Fe3 plus, which was converted to Fe2 plus for absorption by cytochrome B reductase. So we have another enzyme known as HEF-hesitin. What this HEF-hesitin does, it again converts this Fe2 plus, it oxidizes it. It was a reduction here, this is the oxidation here, redox reaction basically. This Fe2 plus gets again converted to oxidized to Fe3 plus. Okay, now this Fe3 plus is Fe2 plus is converted to Fe3 plus by a molecule that or protein that is known as HEF-hesitin. So now this Fe3 plus again get inside the blood, bounds to plasma transferrin. Okay, I told initially also this transferrin helps in the transfer of iron to various part of the body, or the transfer of iron from one place to other. Now from this bounded form, the Fe3 plus iron gets bound to plasma transferrin, and this bounded form goes to all the body parts wherever it is required. Okay, now we have a name that is hepcidin. Okay, this is hepcidin, a molecule which is synthesized by a liver. I'll be talking about it. What is the importance of this hepcidin molecule? If we don't want this iron to be here, there is sufficient stores of the iron, there is sufficient iron in the body. This hepcidin inhibits ferroportin 1, or you can in easier form say it closes it, or this basically internalizes this ferroportin 1, and this transport across this ferroportin 1 gets stopped. The iron cannot come out, and if it will not come out, it cannot bind to plasma transferrin. It cannot bind to plasma transferrin, it cannot be used anywhere. Okay, so basically hepcidin is decreasing it, the iron coming out from the mucosal cell, it stays inside. Now if at all this plasma bounded form goes to the body wherever it is required. So basically this was the absorption, and this is the mucosal cell theory. Next is, what is hepcidin? It is a 25 amino acid hormones which is synthesized by liver. Already told, it internalizes the ferroportin, decreases the transfer of iron across the basolateral membrane. Now we have TMPRSS6, which is very important question here, comes in various entrance examination. It is type 2 transmembrane serine protease. Okay, type 2 transmembrane serine protease is a protein which inhibits hepcidin. So if hepcidin is inhibited, it will internalize the ferroportin, and the iron transfer across the basolateral membrane will get stopped and iron won't be available there. Sorry, if I'm telling it inhibits the hepcidin, and if hepcidin is inhibited, it won't be internalizing the ferroportin, and this decreased transfer will get stopped and more iron will be available there for absorption. Okay. Basically, hepcidin is decreasing the absorption, and this TMPRSS6 is inhibiting hepcidin or is down regulating this hepcidin. So this ferroportin won't get internalized, and this decreased transfer won't occur. There will be a proper transfer of iron, and it will be available. Okay, and this TMPRSS6, okay, this works basically if there is hypoxia, if there is iron deficiency anemia, it down regulates this hepcidin and there is increased absorption of iron. And one important condition, that is genetic variant of this type 2 transmembrane serine protease enzyme. If there is a genetic variant of this condition in which this inhibition of the hepcidin or down regulation of hepcidin doesn't occurs, and there is decreased absorption of iron. So in that condition, this genetic variant of TMPRSS6, that is type 2 transmembrane serine proteases, in that condition it doesn't inhibit hepcidin. So this was the absorption of the iron in detail. So when in the blood, after absorption from ferroportin 1, then conversion to the Fe3 plus, again from Fe2 plus to Fe3 plus by the hephazetin molecule, then it is available in blood. I told you it gets bound to transferrin, and it supplies all the parts of the body wherever iron is required. In erythrocytes, if it goes, it helps in synthesis of hemoglobin. When it gets destructed in spleen, that is the reticuloendothelial system, the hemoglobin after a lifespan of 120 days, which is 90 days in preterm babies. So this iron hemoglobin gets break here into heme and globin. Again heme goes back and is again reutilized. In pregnancy, it gets transferred from placenta, from mother to fetus, and in a liver, if it is extra, it gets stored as ferritin, and I already told the storage form. And if muscle, it goes for synthesis of myoglobin and non-heme iron containing proteins. This is the iron cycle of the body, and the left out, which is not used, is this mucosal sloughing, desquamation, and in form of menstruation. The losses of iron is like this, it is 1 to 2 milligram per day. And this mucosal sloughing, I'll tell you now what is this mucosal sloughing. If this mucosal ferritin is not utilized, I intentionally skipped this part because I wanted to discuss it here. This mucosal ferritin, if not iron is not used for 3 to 4 days from this ferroportin, it stays here, and after that this mucosal sloughing takes place, shedding of the epithelial cells, this iron gets lost and gets excreted. So this was the iron cycle in body. Coming on to the causes of iron deficiency. If you have understood this absorption of iron, it will be very easy to understand the causes of iron deficiency. So first condition, if there is deficiency, it is a very basic thing. If there is deficiency of anything in the body, there can be following reasons for it. It can be that it's decreased intake for anything. It's not for iron. It can be it's decreased intake. If the intake is proper, there can be reduced absorption. If there is absorption is also okay, then the deficiency can be due to increased demand. And if demand is also normal, absorption is also normal, intake is also good, there can be increased losses. Somewhere it has to cause deficiency. And if the losses are also not there, there is inadequate transport. So we'll be discussing each in detail. First of all, decreased intake. If it is simple, inadequate intake of iron containing foods. If our diet is not proper and we are not eating food which I already told as sources of vegetable and non-veg iron, if we are not eating those iron rich containing food, that is lead to inadequate intake and ultimately iron deficiency. We are eating diet containing low or non bioavailable iron. Okay, then it is also comes under decreased intake leading to iron deficiency. Coming on to the reduced absorption, we already told then if the infant is non-breastfed, okay, the human mother's milk, that is breast milk, has lactoferrin, which was having 50 to 70% bioavailability. So this breast milk, if on when the baby is on exclusive breastfeeding, so this for initial first to 6 months, this lactoferrin and breast milk takes care of the iron stores and the iron deficiency, so that it doesn't occur much. And if the infant is non-breastfed and is shifted to cow's milk, okay, then it leads to iron deficiency, that is the bovine milk, that was decreasing the absorption of iron, as well as what other point cow milk has, we will be discussing in this malabsorption of iron. So we are in, first of all we'll do is cow milk allergy. Okay, there is a entity known as cow milk allergy which leads to decreased absorption, and cow milk allergy, there is, it is in the form of occult blood loss in stools. Okay, this cow milk allergy leads to occult blood in stools and ultimately iron deficiency anemia, and other causes of malabsorption like chronic diarrhea, celiac disease, giardiasis, GI surgery. So we were talking about TMP RSS6, which is a genetic variant, and normally what it does, normally the TMP RSS6, it inhibits or downregulates the hepcidin, which leads to the non-internalization of ferroportin and the normal absorption of iron takes place. Okay, basically if in the genetic variant, okay, in the genetic variant it doesn't forms a function, it doesn't inhibits the hepcidin. Now hepcidin is free to do its work, it internalizes the ferroportin and iron doesn't comes out of the mucosal cell, and it ultimately leads to the iron deficiency. So these were the causes of reduced absorption. Okay, now coming on to the increased requirement, whether the requirement when it increases in periods of growth. We are basically more, what are the most important periods of growth if we discuss pediatrics and adolescent, it is the preterm infants, it is the age of toddler and puberty, the reproductive females, pregnancy and lactation, all these are causes of increased requirement which leads to iron deficiency. Now coming on to the increased losses, this is also very important. If blood is lost due to all of these causes, the GI bleed, which we don't see much other, if the child is having chronic liver disease or the child is in acute liver failure, okay, the liver is failure or there is any coagulopathy or there is portal hypertension and there is GI bleeding, or and there are any gastric or duodenal ulcers which are leading to bleeding, that can lead to blood loss and that can lead to iron deficiency anemia. If there is any polyp, that can also lead to GI bleed. Next, this repeated blood sampling is very important. Why this is very important? Daily when we, especially in newborns, this is very important. Suppose a newborn baby gets admitted in nursery in NICU and it stays for a period of, if he 14 or say 15-16 days, or okay, and child is having a sepsis, so it is not wise enough to order repeat blood test of a newborn. See, repeat, we cannot treat baby according to every time according to blood test. We should have a clinical acumen. We got one blood test, unless and until child is getting deteriorated, there is no point of getting repeated blood sampling, getting repeated test, because a small amount of blood withdrawn for a sample for a test in a case of newborn is very much, which can lead to iron deficiency anemia, which is very common condition. If in NICUs all over the worldwide, if there are more and more blood tests being advised, more and more blood sample is being withdrawn, and they take around, many labs I have seen, they say we need 1 ml. Okay, we need, so that 1 ml is very much for a newborn. So okay, if you are taking it as a routine, as a sepsis screen once you have taken. If the child is not getting to it, or if you have given a transfusion, there is no need to getting it repeated again and again to see whether sepsis is getting okay. If there is clinical improvement, you can keep on continuing the treatment rather than you again and again ordering investigation and seeing whether sepsis is not improving or not. Yeah, wherever it's necessary it should be done. So we should minimize the repeated blood sampling. And other thing, repeated blood sampling means multiple pricks, multiple disruption of the skin barrier, which can also lead to increased sepsis and not only iron deficiency anemia. Menstruation in females, intestinal parasites, that is hookworm. So this hookworm infestation is very important in cases those, how this hookworm gets spread. Basically children of farmers who are walking barefoot in farms, okay, in farmlands, they are walking barefoot, the hookworm gets inside through skin, takes entry through skin and reaches inside the body and it sucks blood. So basically hookworm infestation is very important for iron deficiency anemia. There lies the role of very extensive project of Indian government of deworming. Now coming next is the inadequate transport for as a cause of iron deficiency anemia. So the inadequate transport, what does inadequate transport here means? Inadequate transport, what was the transferring molecule which was taking iron from one place to another? It was transferrin. Okay, so if there is a transferrinemia, there is no transferrin in the blood, iron, that molecule of iron won't be able to move from one point to another because it was moving with the help of transferrin. Next is the anti-transferrin receptor antibodies, is another condition in which transferrin is not available to take iron from one point to the other. So basically these in short were the causes of iron deficiency anemia. Now coming on to the clinical features. So clinical features basically we can study in two parts, hematological and manifestations and non-hematological manifestations. Coming on to the hematological investigations first, clinical manifestations. This hematological clinical manifestations which is we are seeing in daily OPD, our daily practice. So most important clinical manifestation, that is hematological manifestation, depends on the severity, how much severe is the anemia is. So first thing is that we will be getting pallor. Where we can check pallor? We can check in the tongue, we can check in the lower palpebral conjunctiva, we can see on the hands, on the palmar aspect we can see the creases. So what happens in the figure also, it is the way how to we check pallor. And if we compare, these are the hands of, and this is the basically hand of baby or other patient, this is the hand of examiner. What we can do, we simply can compare with our hand or hand of parent or our hand. Basically we can take it as control and we see the infants or the child hand and we can clearly see what is the difference. This is very red and this is pale. Okay, so basically this is the pallor. Okay, now next, if there is no decreased iron, there is reduced hemoglobin and there is easy fatigability, anorexia, irritability. So this is very common, this irritability is very common. Most of the time the child, when we get the child, the mother says the child stays very irritable, he doesn't eat anything. And in OPD practice, when we get a case of anemia, it is very common. Okay, anemia, unless proved otherwise, we should consider it as nutritional anemia, and more common in nutritional is iron deficiency anemia. So what happens, what mother complains, most common scenario, most common age group, we get a 9 or 1 year of age infant, we get and mother complains, doctor साहब ये तो कुछ खाता नहीं है. What we see child has pallor, we see it has irritable child. And what complaint we get, then what history we take, we ask them what is the dietary history. Okay, we take dietary history, which is very important. And then what mother is very happy and mother is very confident when you ask, हाँ जी ये तो पूरा खाता पीता है. And what is the actual problem, she then what you should ask is taking history of milk. okay, which is very important. After 6 months of age, there lies the importance of the complementary feeding. And mother, what she'll say, जी डॉक्टर साहब ये तो 8 से 9 बार मैं इसको दूध भी पिलाती हूँ, तब भी ये इसका ऐसे से हो रहा है, इसका खून पता नहीं क्यों नहीं बढ़ रहा. So that there lies the importance of pediatrician. We should explain them that after 6 months of age there is importance of other complementary foods. There lies the importance of complementary feeding. That milk is not a very good source of iron, especially in Indian population they consider cow milk as very special milk. They'll start giving cow milk, and that too diluted, to their children, which reduces the absorption of iron. One thing is this. One second is its poor source of iron, bioavailability is less. Plus, if mother is keep on giving milk to the infant, his tummy will be full and the child won't be accepting cereals, solid food. So it is very important that at that particular time we should explain the mother, we should decrease the amount of feeding, frequency of feeding, and we should introduce more and more solid foods. We should tell them you should give child something solid, semi-solid to eat, and decrease the feeding. And simultaneously we treat anemia, and it helps that food which child takes helps this iron start getting improving, the hemoglobin ultimately starts getting improving. Next, if the anemia is very severe, that is less than 7 is severe anemia. So, and if it at all is less than 5 or 4 or 6, what we get, there is hyperdynamic circulation, we get palpitation, okay, we get, there is decreased exercise tolerance, even we can get CHF, that is congestive heart failure. Now, why there is hyperdynamic circulation or palpitation? The explanation to this is we have hemoglobin as a carrier molecule for oxygen. Okay, right? We have oxygen. Now there is anemia. There is less of hemoglobin because of less of iron. There is less of hemoglobin synthesis in the body. So suppose there are, so that hemoglobin, so hyperdynamic circulation, why it is occurring? Because there is less of hemoglobin, okay, less of hemoglobin, but the demand of body and body tissues, especially the vital organ, remains the same, and hemoglobin is less, so there is difference between supply and demand. So that less amount of hemoglobin has to do more work, okay. It sends message to the body that the tissues are getting less oxygen, because less of hemoglobin, less oxygen to tissues say there is anoxia or hypoxia level of tissues, okay. So message goes to heart, which is the pumping organ of the blood. It, what message he gets, heart gets message that there is very less amount of oxygen going to tissues, and only heart is having its function of pumping the blood. So heart starts to pump more and more. Hearts will keep on pumping more and more. So there will be tachycardia, okay, there will be increased heart rate, there will be hyperdynamic circulation, and there will be, in more severe cases, when the child, there will be a murmur known as hemic murmur. So we can get a hemic murmur in cases of severe anemia, which, and if the child is in CHF also, okay. Hepatosplenomegaly we can get, it is not very common, but it is not very uncommon also. We can get hepatosplenomegaly in that. We can get pedal edema. Pedal edema can be because of CHF, impaired renal function, or deficiency of the proteins. Rarely we can get raised ICT with papilledema. One very important, there's changes in the skull because of the frontal and the parietal bossing. So the shape of the head gets quadrangular. We know which is known as caput quadratum, which is more commonly seen in hemolytic anemias. We can get in iron deficiency anemia also. These were the hematological investigations. Now coming on to the non-hematological investigation or manifestations. This first is the koilonychia. Koilonychia is spoon-shaped nails. We can see in the picture on the top right side that the shape of the nails has depression, like just like a spoon. This spoon-shaped nails are known as koilonychia. Next is the platynechia, which is the flat nails. Glossitis is the inflammation of tongue. We get, we can see there is atrophic or the glossitis, atrophic glossitis, and glossitis is the inflammation of tongue. We get stomatitis and angular cheilitis. We can see this angles of the mouth. Okay, there is disruption of the skin and inflammation here. Many patients, not that common in pediatrics, but the adult patients get this as we get as a presentation that unke lips they get cracked hair, there is inflammation. So this is cheilitis, which is caused by deficiency of iron and many other nutrients also. Next is the syndrome we iron we get, that is a Plummer-Vinson syndrome. Okay, Plummer-Vinson syndrome. The other name of this syndrome is Patterson-Kelly syndrome. We get to read this syndrome in ENT also, where we study esophagus, right? So this syndrome is found in cases of iron deficiency anemia along with esophageal webs, koilonychia, and we get splenomegaly. Okay, there is dysphagia because of this esophageal webs. There is the spoon-shaped nails, iron deficiency anemia. We can get glossitis and splenomegaly. So this is Plummer-Vinson syndrome, PV syndrome, and Patterson-Kelly syndrome. One and the same thing, two names for one syndrome. Next is the pica, that is the physiological ingestion of non-nutritive substances. What non-nutritive substances? It can be clay or mud or dust, which is known as geophagia. It can be ice, it can be pagophagia, it can, and many other, laundry starch and many other things. What this is also very most common presentation we found in 70 to 80%. So this 70 to 80% of cases of iron deficiency anemia, they can present as pica. Many of the mothers which are come from rural background, they don't realize the pallor of the child. What they realize is जी डॉक्टर साहब बच्चा ना मिट्टी बहुत खाता है, मिट्टी बहुत खाता है, दीवारों का पेंट खोच खरोच खरोच के खा जाता है, हमारे यहाँ बहुत मिट्टी खाता है. तो दिस इज द मोस्ट कॉमन प्रेजेंटिंग फीचर in cases of rural population and in OPD when you said. So in among the clinical features, this is 70 to 80%. So this gets okay, this gets reversed, and child stops eating all this non-nutritive substances, which is not normal for that developmental age, or which is not culturally acceptable. This is the definition of pica. So when we give iron to these children who are having pica, who eat mud, who eat paint, and who eat clay or ice, what happens? This gets reversed. Child stops eating once the iron gets inside and the stores are built up. What all other things we can see? There is lower IQ, lack of concentration. Everything gets improved if we treat it with iron. Poor endurance and physical fitness is because of the reason the iron deficiency anemia. There is deficiency of iron, and which also iron also has role in myoglobin. So myoglobin is a protein of muscle. Poor muscle fitness, and there is poor endurance. Next, this was the clinical manifestations. Coming on to the investigation, how will we diagnose? One is the clinical diagnosis. We'll see the clinical manifestations, the hematological and the non-hematological. Most of the time it is clinically diagnosed, but to label it and what investigations we should get it done is the complete blood count first. Okay, first of all we should get complete blood count and peripheral smear done. In complete blood count, hemoglobin is decreased. PCV is packed cell volume, or the hematocrit, it gets decreased. This packed cell volume is 3 times of the hemoglobin. Okay, so if hemoglobin is 5, it will be 15. If it is 7, it will be 21. So it is 3 times. PCV is 3 times of the hemoglobin, which we should know this. Next, coming on to the MCV, it is the mean corpuscular volume. In a cases of iron deficiency anemia, it gets decreased, MCV get increased, mean corpuscular, and this MCH, okay, mean corpuscular hemoglobin, this also gets decreased. It is less than 27 picogram. Here unit is femtoliter, 80 femtoliter, and this MCH is less than 27 picogram. And MCHC, mean corpuscular hemoglobin concentration, is less than 32%. Okay, it is less than 32%. Next is RDW. What is RDW? RDW is red cell distribution width. This RDW gets increased. So this increased content, it is plus, my normal is around 13, we get more than 14 in iron deficiency anemia. What does this red cell distribution with tells? This tells about degree of anisopoikilocytosis. What is anisopoikilocytosis? Anisopoikilocytosis means variation in size and shape of RBCs. Okay, so we'll get to study this in peripheral smear. If we order a peripheral smear or general blood picture, what we see, the pathologist says it hypochromic, microcytic hypochromic RBCs. Okay, what does microcyte means? What does hypochromic means? This microcytic is decided on the basis of MCV, which is decreased, which tells about the size of RBC. Okay, so this is microcyte, which is normal से कम हो रहा है MCV, तो RBC will get smaller in size. This is microcytic. Okay, hypochromic means less of hemoglobin concentration. Okay, which is according to the MCH and FCHC, which is both less. So first thing, we get microcytic hypochromic RBCs. Okay, I've told the explanation. And what happens? There is anemia. Message goes to brain. Oh, sorry. Message goes to bone marrow. It starts producing. Bone marrow gets activated. Okay, tries to produce more and more of hemoglobin, more and more of RBCs. So in that form, but the hemoglobin content is, the iron content is less, so we get various different size and shape of RBCs, that is increased RDW, that is the anisopoikilocytosis. The pathologist tells there is presence of pencil shaped RBC. We can clearly see in this blood picture there is this long slender RBC. This is pencil shaped RBC. Okay, we get hypochromic RBC. In this RBC we can clearly see there is less of this purple color. This taking up of stain is less. So this is hemoglobin is less. We get target shaped RBCs. What is target shaped RBC? Target shaped RBCs are like this. We have a central dark dot in this. This is target shape. We get teardrop RBC. It's like just like a drop of a tear. That's why it's named teardrop. Now in CBC the HB gets fall, the red blood cell RBC cell count is less. WBC stays normal. Platelets can be normal or increased, that is thrombocytosis we can get in case of iron deficiency. Next is the, if we get serum iron studies done and the serum iron concentration is less than 40 microgram per DL. Okay, it is less than 40 microgram per DL. It is very important in absence of any other chronic infection or malignancy. This concentration is less than 40 gram is pertinent to in absence of chronic infection or malignancy. Next is TIBC and transferrin saturation. TIBC is total iron binding capacity and transferrin saturation. TIBC gets, this total iron binding capacity gets increased from normal is 250 to 350 microgram per DL. It gets increased, it is more than 350 microgram per DL. And this transferrin saturation, okay, this transferrin saturation is less than 12%. We should remember this figure of 12. Okay, this RDW is also more than 12 and this transferrin saturation is less than 12%, just to remember. And serum ferritin, that is the storage form of iron, again is less than 12 nanogram per ml. Okay, serum ferritin is the storage form iron. It tells about the total iron status in the body. Next is the soluble plasma transferrin receptor. It gets increased, and per se for iron deficiency anemia there is no need of getting a bone marrow done. Next, we have studied the absorption, the complete metabolism, we have studied the causes, we have studied the clinical manifestations, hematological and non-hematological. Now we have studied the investigations. We have diagnosed its iron deficiency anemia. Now part comes to how to treat it. Okay, treatment. Iron deficiency means we have to supplement iron. It's very simple. So basically treatment depends on severity. If It is very severe anemia, that is it is HB is less than 4 gram per DL with or without CHF. That is not matter of concern. We should admit or hospitalize the child. Okay, if less than 4 per it is 4 gram per DL, we should transfuse blood. And what we should transfuse blood, what blood should be transfused means child is very critical. We must be getting that child can hyperdynamic circulation, okay, palpitations, tachycardia, we can get bilateral Krebs, liver tender large liver, we can get hepatomegaly. That is because of, if the child is in CHF, we can get a hemic murmur. So we don't need to give more of fluids, IV fluid. We should arrange blood, and blood that too packed RBC. There's no such indication of giving whole blood these days. So what component is less, we'll give that in a good concentration. That is, we'll give packed red blood cell transfusion, and that we give with dosage of 10 ml per kg and very slow. Okay, we should take care that there should be no volume overload. In many centers we give it as for a duration of 4 to 5 hours, we give by 10 ml per kg. And many centers also prefer to give, to decongest in between, they give a dose of furosemide 1 to 2 mg per kg in between the transfusion. Okay, and we should keep monitoring, and we should take care of the overload. Child should not go in overload, because already the child is in compensated state, child may be in CHF. Next, in sick patients, we have arranged blood, we have transfused blood, child must be better, and we should see if there is need of oxygen supplementation also in cases of sick children. Next is the mild to moderate. If anemia is mild to moderate, or if you have transfused blood and the iron, now the hemoglobin level has increased and there is no risk, there is no CHF, and the child is comparatively better, you have brought the child out of that emergency situation. Now you have to supplement iron, and dose of that is 3 to 6 mg of elemental iron. That is very important, elemental iron per kg. See, there are very large number of iron preparations present in the market, which are iron sulfate, okay, ferrous sulfate, ferrous gluconate, ferrous fumarate, and many other ferric forms also. Okay, ferric forms, there is carbonyl forms, colloidal iron, there are many forms. So this increasing order of bioavailability, this fumarate, I have written in increasing order of the bioavailability. The first fumarates also have the more maximum bioavailability, and the most common preparation we use is the colloidal iron, that is the tonoferron. This age old iron preparation which we are using. So we have to give it 3 to 6 mg per elemental iron per kg. We have to take care of, and while prescribing we have to take care, tell we should not take it with along with milk, because of the calcium decreases absorption. We should take care of other factors also which decreases the absorption, and we should see that it doesn't happen, otherwise our treatment won't be completely taking care of the anemia. Next important thing is the duration of therapy. So it takes 1 to 3 months for hemoglobin to get normal, to get to the desired levels. The hemoglobin deficit takes 1 to 3 months to get corrected by the this iron supplementation. After that, it should be given for more 1 to 3 months, that is total therapy of 1 to 6 months, because we need to replenish the iron stores also. That is very important, that takes another 3 months. So total therapy goes for 1 to 6 months, and we in between we can get repeat hemoglobin on. And again that we should not get it done so frequently, like weekly or not. We should wait for 15 days or 20 days, we can get it repeated. And if it is on the rising trend, we should wait, and that too we can again get it done after 2 months also. Okay, so and the this absorption, one thing more about absorption. If in the starting phase, starting weeks of therapy, when anemia is much more, the iron absorption is much more. Okay, slowly this absorption of iron gets decreased as anemia start getting corrected. So in the starting, it is basically more severe the anemia, more is the more absorption of iron. Less severe is the anemia, or anemia is correction and there is less absorption. Okay. Next is the parenteral iron therapy, which is not, I have never used, which is basically not so recommended in children and is not actually required. Still, if there is very child is bleeding, having GI bleed, severe toxicity or the severe intolerance to the oral iron, in that cases we can give iron dextran, which was age old. Recent is the ferric carboxymaltose, which is not that easily available, and the iron sucrose. But frankly speaking, we that is not being practiced. No, the parenteral iron formula for calculating how much parenteral iron should be given. It is iron in mg equals to weight in kg multiplied by hemoglobin deficit in into 4. That is all. We should take care of it. At last, take home messages: we should tell what is the see the bioavailability of foods. We should see how the absorption is getting affected by what substances. We should educate parents, take care of we should deworm the child if child is having worm infestation. The pica gets okay by its own by supplementing iron. Dietary, yeah, the diet correction is the most important, equally important, as equal as iron supplementation. So we should advise proper diet. Okay. Milk eat most commonly when you will sit in OPD and you will see it is the diet. Patients, attendants, or the mothers, both parents, they are very happy, they are very confident that they are giving very nice. What they keep on giving, they keep on giving milk and milk. And what we should do, we should decrease the milk and increase the food, and along with the iron supplementation, which will lead to correction of the iron, and the anemia will get corrected. Thank you, friends.